The Organization of American States joins the worldwide condemnation against Ecuador after the violent assault on the Mexican embassy in Quito. Argentine trade unions, social and human rights organizations filed a criminal complaint against the government of Javier Milei for threats against the workers' protests. And the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei assured that Israel would be punished for its mistake after the terrorist acts perpetrated by Israel in Syria. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. The Organization of American States joins the world condemnation received by Ecuador after the violent assault on the Mexican embassy in Quito. The Ecuadorian Foreign Ministry attended on Tuesday an extraordinary meeting held in Washington to address a diplomatic crisis with Mexico. In this context, the arguments of Daniel Noboa's government were not well received by the attendants. A dozen ambassadors who took the floor and agreed on the obligation to respect international law and affirmed that there is no justification to break the inviolability of diplomatic headquarters. The issue will be discussed again in a new extraordinary session convened for April 10th at the request of Colombia and Bolivia.
In light of the serious situation openly contrary to international law that this unthinking and mistaken action by the government of Ecuador brought about, Mr. President, at this session, Bolivia takes due note of the statements made by the Deputy Foreign Minister of the Republic of Ecuador as well as of the two press releases issued by its foreign ministry over the weekend. In that sense, it's expressly stated for the corresponding legal effects that the Ecuadorian authorities confessed the Ecuadorian police's actions on Friday evening, April 5, 2024, at the headquarters of the Mexican embassy in the city of Quito. Ecuador were determined consciously and straightforwardly by the President of Ecuador, Daniel Noboa Acin.
In Colombia, the prosecutor's office filed an indictment on Tuesday against former President Álvaro Uribe as the alleged perpetrator of the crimes of bribery of witnesses in criminal proceedings and procedural fraud, for which he will be called to trial. This is the latest update in a long legal battle in which the Superior Court of Bogotá last ruled in October against filing the case following a prosecutor's request. The accusation was brought by the first prosecutor before the Supreme Court of Justice, Gilberto Villarreal, who took on the case that dates back to 2012. According to sources from the prosecutor's office, based on the physical evidence and probative elements, it was concluded that there was sufficient grounds to indict Uribe. Brazil's National Human Rights Council denounced an alarming upsurge in neo-Nazi domestic movements. The agency attached to the Ministry of Human Rights and Citizenship communicated with the United Nations to issue an alert. The affair is particularly serious in the state of Santa Catarina, in the southern region of the country, where a large population of German origin is settled, and it is one of the areas with the highest number of neo-Nazi cells. The council reported hate speech, especially targeting women, black, and sex-diverse population. In Argentina, trade unions, together with social and human rights organizations, filed on Tuesday a criminal complaint against the government of Javier Milei for acts of intimidation. The leaders claim that the executive has imposed the presence of armed security personnel in the different workers' assemblies. According to the leadership of the Association of State Workers of Buenos Aires, these actions seek to intimidate the workers and keep them from mobilizing in favor of the 70,000 employees who the national government has left on the street. In this context, on Monday, Pope Francis expressed his support for workers of the Argentine news agency teleSUR, whose closure was announced by the President Javier Milei. The highest authority of the Catholic Church expressed his concern for the situation of the news agency's workers and said that he prays for their improvement. On March 1st, the President ratified on national television his intention to close teleSUR, proceeding to fence off its two headquarters in Buenos Aires, the country's capital. He also deployed police forces to prevent workers from entering. The closure of Telam cannot be decided by the executive. Such a decision must be approved in the parliament, where there are no proceedings in progress.
Sometimes it worries me a little, in communication, when I see a situation of insecurity. I think of the Telam workers, for example, as if they do not see the future and do not know for sure how the road ahead will continue. I pray for the workers, who are in that nebulous situation.
Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In the United States, an appeals court judge on Monday rejected former President Donald Trump's attempt to pause a criminal trial in Manhattan and move it elsewhere. The judge, Lisbeth Gonzalez, issued her decision Monday after hearing arguments from Trump's lawyers and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which accused Trump of falsifying records to cover up a sex scandal. For weeks, the former commander has been trying to delay the trial, the first for a former U.S. president, and possibly the only one of the 4 criminal cases against him that will go to trial this year. Trump's attempt to move the case out of Manhattan was not only delay strategy he used on Monday. In another proceeding, he also indicated that he planned to file an unusual type of lawsuit against the judge leading the case, Juan M. Merchan. The director of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, Hagan Shapagan, arrived in Cuba on Monday. His visit to the island seeks to strengthen mutual cooperation. The senior official had several meetings in Havana, the Cuban capital. One of them was held at the headquarters of the National Assembly of the People's Power. There the diplomat spoke with the vice president of the legislative body, Ana María Machado. The director of the Humanitarian Federation took the opportunity to highlight the values of Cuban solidarity with all the peoples of the world, regardless of the conditions imposed by the U.S. blockade, especially in the sector of public health. During the visit to the legislative headquarters, Chapagan assured that it is important to improve the solidarity strategy.
One of the first points is to make aid much faster, and to be able to position aid in a much closer place so that it can be delivered faster, just before the crisis starts.
We move on to other topics. Haiti's Transitional Council already has a roadmap. It's an action plan that prioritizes restoring justice, the rule of law, and a constitutional reform. This was announced by the parties, organizations, and alliances that make up the interim body. The Presidential Council and the next consensus government will be in charge of pursuing an agreement on arranging elections, among other top priority issues. According to the document that discloses such decision, the goal of all these initiatives is to put the country back on the path of stability, peace, unity, and progress. Also, in other news, on Wednesday, during the Eid al-Fitr ceremony, Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei assured that Israel will be punished for its mistake. Khamenei referred to the Iranian officers and workers killed in terrorist acts perpetrated by Israel in Syria. He recalled that the Persian embassies and consulates are Iranian territory wherever they are. He also highlighted that the murderous campaign that has claimed more than 33,000 lives in Gaza, reiterating that Israel and its Western allies should be punished in an exemplary manner. In the same way, hours earlier, the commander of the Iranian naval force, Ali Reza Tansiri, called for a coalition of Muslim armies against Israel. and the absolute ruin of many areas of the Gaza Strip, Palestinians celebrate Eid al-Fitr as the end of Ramadan is known. Peace did not arrive, neither did the food. However, the Palestinians of the Strip are not resigned to suspending a fundamental celebration for the Muslim faith. From today until Friday, the fast of the last month will be broken. In the tents where they are cornered by the genocidal occupier, they exhibit the symbols of this date. Many women have come as volunteers in spite of their losses to collaborate with the preparation of cookies for the children. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas called on the country to limit this holiday as a show of solidarity with Gaza. Meanwhile, in Palestine, the Civil Defense Service recovered 409 corpses inside the Al-Shifa hospital after Israel withdrew from the medical complex and its surroundings. On a statement, the Gazan Civil Defense informed that they continue with the debris removal works alongside the governmental entities and international institutions. At once, they urged the international community and senior authorities to support with the supply of equipment and machinery for digging works in order to speed up the extraction of the corpses under the infrastructure smashed up after the bombings. Meanwhile, Palestinian citizens denounced the kidnapping of children by the Israeli troops after their withdrawal, in addition to the death toll triggered by the military operation. And in this context, the government of Turkey imposed restrictions on exports to Israel until a ceasefire is consolidated in the Gaza Strip. According to government authorities, the decision covers groups of products such as steel, fertilizers, jet fuels, among others. The measure came into force on Tuesday and will remain in force until Israel declares an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and allows sufficient and uninterrupted humanitarian aid to the Strip. This is the first significant measure by Ankara against Israel after 7 months of its genocidal operation against the Palestinian population, a decision that, according to the Israeli regime, will not go unchallenged. And now we have a final short break coming up. But before, we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The European Union's decisive attempt to reform its immigration and asylum policy faces a close vote in Parliament. This comprehensive overhaul aims to turn the page on nearly 10 years of isolated reactions and instead establish common and predictable standards for managing the reception and relocation of asylum seekers. The measure has been strongly criticized by human rights advocates, and 161 civil societies and organizations have called on the MEPs to reject it. The left, with 37 MEPs, and the Greens, with 72 MEPs, oppose the reform, arguing that the strict provisions provided by the member states will degrade the quality of the asylum process and fuel violations of fundamental rights.
My colleagues have managed to keep balance between solidarity and responsibility in all the dossiers. It has not been easy, but that only gives a higher sense of achievement. We have gone against forecasts and shown that Europe can comply with the affairs that matter to citizens.
Also, the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Joseph Borrell, affirmed that the possibility of a high-intensity conventional war in Europe is no longer a fantasy. The head of European diplomacy called on Tuesday for the creation of a European financial mechanism dedicated to security and defense, as he considers that war is on the horizon. Several European officials have also cited an increased military threat in recent months, as the world is moving from a post-war to a pre-war state. For his part, Borrell insisted that increasing competition between the great powers, high-intensity conflict between the states, militarization of economic dependencies, and disinformation are part of the European reality. And in other news, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, violence by armed gangs caused a quarter of the population to face critical levels of hunger, worsening the humanitarian crisis in the country. International organizations warn about the number of deaths and the continuous clashes between armed groups and the army in the region. More than 120 armed groups are fighting for control of the land, resulting in some 230,000 people being displaced and deprived of access to food, health services, and education. As a result of this violence, many Congolese families are crowded into refugee camps with food shortages and poor sanitation services. And in Bolivia this month will take place the 14th Festival of American Renaissance and Baroque Music, Misiones de Chiquitos 2024, a cultural event that has gained worldwide fame and that this year will offer more than 100 concerts over 10 days with the participation of 1,000 Bolivian musicians and musicians from various parts of the world. Our correspondent Freddy Morales tells us all the details.
This is the music orchestra of San Jose de Chiquitos, a province of Santa Cruz whose town has more than 30,000 inhabitants in the warm east of Bolivia. Most of these musicians are indigenous.
I started playing the violin when I was 5 years old. I went through the infantile until I reached the juvenile. 2 years ago I recently passed to the juvenile and I have given my concerts. I have traveled.
San Jose de Chiquitos is one of the Jesuit missions that in the 16th and 17th centuries evangelized the continent. They taught the natives sacred music, including music reading and the making of European instruments such as the violin, which survived the passage of time. The conductor of this orchestra is 25 years old.
We have toured in Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil. We have gone to Europe, also, Portugal, France, Spain. In 2018 we went to the United States. We performed in Miami.
Unlike other countries, in Bolivia this production of Renaissance and Baroque music has been recovered.
Bolivia has the largest collections, but among Bolivia's collections, the one that stands out the most is the one in eastern Bolivia, the Misiones de Chiquitos. More than 5,500 pages of Baroque music have been found there. And this manuscript is the most unique manuscript that Santa Cruz has. Not Bolivia, not America, but humanity.
And for the last 15 years, what Doctor of Musicology and priest Piotr Nerek calls a musical phenomenon has become one of the most important Renaissance and Baroque music festivals in the world, the Misiones de Chiquitos Festival.
Juilliard Music School comes from New York, which nowadays gives a scholarship to its students to go and represent themselves in the festival in Bolivia. Isn't it supposed to be the other way around? That your children are the ones who go to a university like this? From Boston College, from Georgetown University, from the United States, from London, comes Royal College of Music. which also gives scholarships to its students to perform in the Festival of Music in Bolivia. From Switzerland, he received Schola Cantorum, which is the champion league of early music in the world.
This year's festival, which will be held in the city of Santa Cruz and in the provinces, and the Jesuit missions themselves, will take place between April 19th and 28th for 10 days.
Julier will sing in concert with the Jungle of Bolivia, the Urubica Choir, the Royal College of Music Choir will perform in co-production with the Aracarenda Choir, a word from the Guaraya language that means old, renewed. The Orchestra of San Jose tonight will perform with an incredible ensemble coming from France. There will be 12 co-productions as well. As the Sherry of the Cake on April 23, in the Mission of St. Xavier, there will be the production by local musicians of the only opera in the world that was saved from the contest of native languages. The opera entitled San Francisco Xavier in Chiquitano.
In 1990, UNESCO awarded 6 Chiquitos villages the title of Living Villages, as part of the cultural heritage of humanity. This year, 800 Bolivian musicians and 200 musicians from around the world will participate in the festival, which will offer a total of 130 concerts in 10 days.
Freddy Morales, teleSUR, Bolivia.
Now we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For telesur English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.